So now, black people, different skin colors correspond with different environments. So black people exist in tropic environments, right? So if evolution doesn't exist, the question I have to ask you is, why do different skin colors correspond with different environments? Why do you find black people in hot places and white people in cold places? Why do you find that? Why is it that way? I'll explain. Because us as humans are the byproducts of context. Black people existing in hot environments for generations and generations and generations and generations, thus develop melanin. What is melanin? Melanin is a biological shield. Melanin blocks the harmful UV rays of the sun. What are UV rays? UV rays are ultraviolet radiation, and the sun releases three electromagnetic spectrums: UVA, UVB, and UVC. And the one that's the most healthy is UVB because it provides us with vitamin D and it also provides us with melanin. Now, UVC, when it tries to come into our earth, is destroyed by the atmosphere. UVA penetrates deeply into the earth but is weaker than UVB. Why did nature create this relationship? Why did nature make UVA weaker than UVB? So, more or less, though, nature has consciousness and it has intent. And as I was saying, black people exist in hot environments, but they exist in those hot environments for certain purposes. Now, UV rays can destroy what's called folate. Folate is a natural B vitamin that is naturally produced in foods. Folate is a B vitamin that is naturally produced in foods. It helps cells to divide, meaning that when you lose a piece of your skin, it will help the skin cells to multiply so that you can regain your skin. It will help you reproduce, meaning you can produce children. Your folate within your body can help you reproduce and multiply your cells so that you can survive. Now, excessive exposure to sunlight can destroy folate. So if you're existing in an extremely hot environment, you need to survive. So how do people existing in extremely hot environments survive? How is this done? We develop what's called melanin. Nature has nurtured melanin into our biological makeup so that we can survive the intense UV rays. So the more UVB rays we get, the more melanin we develop. When we develop that melanin, we block off the harmful aspects of the sunlight and thus protect our folate. When we protect our folate, we're able to reproduce, and our mental and emotional health is thus not compromised. Because if you lose your folate, or if your folate is destroyed, it can also compromise your mental and emotional health. So nature saw this paradigm. Nature said, okay, these black people or these people are existing in hot environments and they have what's called folate. If that folate is destroyed, their mental and emotional health is compromised. So what do we do to protect this folate? Nature or the sun is going to bless your body with what's called melanin, and melanin is a biological shield. Now, melanin blocks UVA rays, but UVA rays are weaker than UVB rays. Why is that the case? Because UVA rays possesses all the potential to give you diseases such as melanoma and skin cancer. But UVB rays possesses the potential to give you strong and healthy bones, better eyesight, a better immune system, and a plethora of other benefits. So UVB rays are stronger than the UVA because the UVA is blocked by the melanin, but the UVB is stronger in order to penetrate the melanin so that it can bless you with the proper vitamins that you need, such as vitamin D. Without vitamin D, you'll develop Ricketts disease, your bones will grow weak, your immune system will grow weaker, your eyesight will grow weaker, your pigment will also fade a little bit, you'll become pale. So thus, we existed in an environment that was strong enough to penetrate our melanin so that we can receive the proper amount of vitamin D in order to thrive within the context of that environment. Now, that's black people within a hot environment. They'll thrive well. They'll exist perfectly. But now put them within a cold environment, and what ends up happening? If you put black people within a cold environment, remember, UVB is stronger than UVA, so that the UVB can penetrate your melanin to give you the vitamin D. The UVA and the UVB, the power that they possess is only in relation to the intensity of the sunlight that's present. So if it's below 0 degrees and there's barely any sun out, best believe there will be barely any UVA or UVB rays out. And if there is any, it is weak, because its power is in relation to the sunlight, and its power is contingent upon the sunlight. So if you put black people within a cold environment, what ends up happening? Those UVA rays and those UVB rays, those UVB rays cannot penetrate the skin. And the UVA rays aren't strong enough to give black people skin cancer. But the critical aspect of what I'm saying is that those UVB rays can't penetrate the skin. So what ends up happening? Your body can no longer receive vitamin D, and you also can't produce more melanin. So thus you'll become more pale. Because if your body isn't producing melanin, you aren't receiving any more pigment. And the less melanin you have, the lighter your eyes become. So your eyes will also become lighter. Your skin will become lighter. But why is it becoming lighter? Why is it making this adaptation? Because the lighter you are, the weaker your biological shield is. Thus, your blocking or your ability to block is weakened, or it's vitiated. And so the positive aspects of the sunlight can penetrate through. So if you're existing in a cold environment, you're going to get lighter, because that cold environment's electromagnetic spectrum isn't strong enough to penetrate into your skin to bless you with the positive aspects of the sun. Now, say if you're too dark and you get lighter, it's no benefit, it's no help, because the UVB rays, or the electromagnetic spectrums of the sun, cannot penetrate your skin. Thus, you won't receive any vitamin D. So what ends up happening? Vitamin D deficiency is associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease in adults, cancer, severe asthma in children, and a weakened immune system. If you do not have vitamin D, your bones will grow weak. You will lose hearing. You need vitamin D to survive. You need vitamin D to maintain a certain degree of pigment. If vitamin D is not there, because vitamin D regulates calcium and phosphorus, which are two extremely important factors for maintaining strong and healthy bones, if vitamin D isn't there, those factors, the phosphorus and the calcium, go to waste. So thus you need vitamin D for strong and healthy bones. Otherwise, your bones will grow weak and you will die eventually, because your immune system will grow weak. When you're hearing, you have 3 bones, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, brothers and sisters, in the comments, but you have 3 bones in your ear that when they hear sound, they vibrate. If your bones are getting weaker, their ability to pick up sound precisely becomes vitiated due to the lack of vitamin D. Your melanin is so strong that the UVB rays are weak in relation to the cold environment that you're in. Thus, you are not receiving any vitamin D, and your bones are becoming weaker and weaker and weaker. You're losing hearing, your immune system is suffering, and you're losing eyesight as well. Remember, the more melanin you have, the darker your eyes are, the better you can see the actual color of a color. So we are the byproduct of evolution. We existed in an environment for so long that that environment created a phenotype that was conducive for us to thrive within the context of that environment. So black people living in New York, like myself, that are subject to seasonal changes, during the winter, the UVB rays are low. Why is that? Because the sun, or the sunlight, isn't as intense. Its presence is not as intense. So what does that do for brothers like me who are highly melanated? We block off so much of the sunlight that we're not receiving any vitamin D. So what ends up happening to us if we aren't receiving any vitamin D? Just like I said before, your bones will grow weak, your immune system will suffer, your eyesight will suffer, and your hearing will also suffer due to a lack of vitamin D. And there are alternatives to compensating for the vitamin D that you're missing, such as fishes and oils. But a lot of our brothers in the community have a vegan culture going on. You know, our brothers want to be vegan because those foods correspond with our DNA. The majority of foods that naturally possess vitamin D are fishes and oils. So if you still want your bones to be strong and healthy and you're trying to maintain a vegan diet, remember, you're not in Africa. So the vegan diet won't be enough to suffice. The vegan diet won't be enough to suffice. You'll have to take in vitamins and minerals as well. Who wants to live like that? We live within context because that is what is best for us. Black people are not the byproduct of the cold. Why? Because if we existed in the cold, we wouldn't receive any vitamin D, we would go weak and we would die. Now, those black people that lived in Europe and survived became completely different creatures. So what ends up happening is, remember what I said, the more melanin you have, the stronger your biological shield is. So the more melanin you have, the more you block the harmful aspects of the sunlight. White people went into a cold environment, so they weren't receiving the UV rays the way they were supposed to. So what ends up happening? Over a gradual period of generations and generations and generations and generations, slowly but surely, after 1,000 minute changes, and with each generation comes a minute change, which means after 1,000 generations, you'll have a person in the 1,000th generation that looked completely different from the original. Why? Because they existed within the context for so long that each generation made a minute adaptation, and by the time you get to the 1,000th or the 6,000th, it looks completely different from the original because of this gradual evolution that happened with each generation. So now black people living within a cold environment that were able to survive developed light skin. Why did they develop light skin? Remember what I said. The stronger your melanin, the stronger your biological shield. Now, if you're existing within a cold environment, but your melanin is too strong, your biological shield is too strong. Thus, you can't receive any vitamin D. You can't receive any more melanin. So that's not the proper environment for you because your eyesight is going to die and your hearing is going to die, as well as your immune system and a plethora of other things. Because nature created us to be byproducts of context. So what nature decided to do was, let's make these former brothers' skin lighter. You want to know why we need to make their skin lighter? Because if their skin doesn't become lighter, the UVB rays won't be able to penetrate through to give them vitamin D. So if their skin is lighter, their biological shield is weaker. Thus, they can take in the below 0 degree sunlight that's there. Why? Because their skin is so light that that little bit of sunlight that they're getting is all they need. Because their melanin is so weak that 90 degrees touching their skin would kill them. It would destroy what? Their folate. And if it destroys their folate, their mental and emotional health is compromised. So when we see these white people in heat, we be like, yeah, these crackers is crazy. Why are they crazy when they in heat? Why are they crazy when it's a very hot environment? Because they have folate. And if your folate is destroyed, your mental and emotional health is compromised. You cannot regulate your emotions properly, and your mind will suffer. Your mental will suffer. The environment of Europe, like my brother Senator said, the clouds were thick and the temperature was very cold, so not much sunlight was penetrating through. So now, since an abundance of sunlight wasn't penetrating through, what ended up happening was their skin, as I said, had to become lighter. When their skin became lighter, their biological shield was weak enough for that weak intensity of sunlight to penetrate through and bless them with the proper vitamin D that they needed. And their biological shield was just strong enough to sustain the UVA rays, meaning the potentially harmful effects of the sunlight, and still survive. Now, if you take those creatures of context, meaning if you switch or if you change the circumstances and facts surrounding a white person's situation, meaning if you take someone that grew up in Northern Europe and put them in the hottest parts of Africa, they will die. Why? Because they're light, which means that their melanin is not abundant, which means that their biological shield is weak. So their folate can easily be exposed and damaged by sunlight. So now, if the sunlight is penetrating their skin too excessively, what ends up happening is their folate is destroyed and the mental and emotional health is compromised. These people will go insane. Some people have had so little exposure to sunlight that they've actually lost or developed defective proteins in their melanin. If people do not believe me, Google an MC1R, a melanocortin 1 receptor. People that typically grow up in Northern Europe lack this skin protein. Why? Why do they lack the skin protein? Because they've existed in an environment for so long that has not supported the melanin that they possess. Eventually, the melanin became defective because we know the law of nature. If you don't use it, you lose it. So that aspect of their melanin that they needed was not being used. So thus, they lost it in order to survive, because this is what nature does. Nature has consciousness and intent. If you are existing in this environment, and this is what you need to lose, and this is what you need to develop in order to exist properly in that environment, this is what we will give you. This is why white people cannot exist in very hot environments. Why? Because if those white people exist in those very hot environments, they'll develop skin cancer. Their folate will be destroyed. Their mental and emotional health will thus be destroyed. All right, like